Hi everyone, and welcome to a tutorial on Audacity. Audacity is a free program that you can download at home, and it is pretty simple to use. You just have to kind of get used to it. When you first open up the software, if you want, they have a quick help and a manual help that can give you some more techniques than I'm going to be showing you in this video. When you first open it up, just close this out. You need to check to make sure a few things before you get started doing any of your recordings. You want to make sure that you have plugged in your mic before you opened your software, just like in GoAnimate. You want to make sure that you find the drop down for the microphone, and you should be looking for the microphone that is the Cyber Acoustics, which is the stand mic. Second thing you want to make sure that you are doing, you want to record in mono. You don't need it to be recording in stereo. The other couple of settings can remain the same for the speaker and the audio host. Things to look out for, you have your playback volume over here and your microphone volume. You might need to play around with your microphone volume. I have a tendency just to leave it all the way up, and once you record your first sound, you'll know whether or not it's too loud or too soft. Alright, so let's get started. Couple of things. Make sure that you are recording one scene's dialogue at a time, no more, because you'll be able to have more control on where it is inserted once you put it into your Flash animation, which we'll be doing next. As you are working, you also want to have open this document because you're going to start to need to include the record time. The record time is going to dictate how long each of your scenes are in your animation. So this is really important to make sure that you fill it in while you are recording once you're finished each sound piece, as opposed to needing to go back. It's going to become an issue later on if you don't make sure that you follow that direction. In Audacity, when you're ready to record, all you need to do is click on this button. At the moment I can't really record, so I have already recorded something and I am going to open my project. So regular open, but since I have a recent one and I know where I saved it, I'm going to open up my original recording. So down here is what's called your track. I find it easier to record single tracks at a time as opposed to having multiple tracks open. That's an option to you, but I find it just easier to work with one track at a time. This is what's called your playhead, and when you want to hear what you've recorded, you just merely click wherever you at the beginning or in between, wherever you would like to start, and you will click on the play. And here is your stop button. After you've recorded, you need to make sure you hit stop. Don't hit pause, or else you're not going to be able to really do anything else. For your title scene, you are required to include not only the title of the book, the author of the book, but this is how you put in your name. And I want you to only include your first name. And it's animated by insert name here. Don't say insert name here. Say your name. Once you're finished, you can start to manipulate the sound as needed. You can see here that I have blank areas as well as the wavelengths. If it doesn't record with the wavelengths and you're just getting a straight line, then your mic isn't being recognized and it isn't recording. Close out the software, unplug the mic, plug it back in, reopen the software. Don't just minimize it down, actually close it out. I found that that's easier for the mic to be recognized by the computer before you go into the software. After you are finished, you'll notice that I have some dead spots in here. Don't really need those, so I'm going to highlight those and I'm going to hit delete. delete just to get rid of that piece. Now, you can play around with the sound a bit. There are different effects and things that you can add into it, but it's a little bit quiet. I might want to amplify the sound a little bit. Even though my mic is all the way up in the highest that it can record at, I still have a very narrow wave height, which means that it's a bit more quiet. So I'm going to highlight, just clicking and dragging, the entire track, and I'm going to go up into the effects menu. In the effects, there's a ton of different types of effects. I'm going to choose amplify. You never really want to amplify more than 17% in the decibels, because then you're going to get some distortions. So I'm just going to amplify it first, 5, and hit OK. And you'll notice that the wavelengths have widened a bit. So let's see, I'm going to click my playhead from the beginning. Okay. Now, I told you not to include your last name, so I'm going to clip that out. So I'm going to click my playhead here just to make sure I'm getting the end and see where I say my last name. Takes a little bit of doing. So now I'm just going to highlight that section, and I'm going to hit delete on my keyboard to get rid of that as well. Now, there are several other things in here, and yes, you can to some degree enhance your voice to change it. If you're using multiple characters, you can change it, because you are the only one that's going to be voicing your entire story. So if you wanted to change it so that you're speaking in a different gender's voice or an animal or something of that nature, there's a couple of different effects that that are in here that will allow you to kind of create a different pitch or bass or treble, as you can see from the list. So if I were to go in and add some bass, bring up the bass, bring down the treble. Male voices generally have more bass, where women's voices generally have more treble. You can see that it drastically changes my recording, but you need to be careful. Tuesday by David Leisner, animated by Rachel School. Now, that didn't really seem like it changed very much. It did. It's light. As soon as you do something that you're not a fan of, you can always Control Z and bring it back to normal. This brings it back just to plain amplified after I played around with some of the other techniques in here. Some of the other techniques in here that you can change, you can play around with the pitch. Again, you want to be careful. You don't want to change the pitch too much, or else you're going to get So now it kind of sounds, I've increased the pitch of my voice and I sound a bit more childlike. Gonna undo it. Control Z. If I bring down the pitch, and you can see that kind of now brings me down into a more maybe a masculine tone if I drop my pitch, as opposed to increasing it, making it more childlike. So that's one of the things that you can change. If you are getting really creative, you can have a sound fade in and fade out. You can, if you need to normalize it or reduce the noise, because there's a lot of noise in the background. I don't really have a whole lot of noise going on in the background at the moment. This can be quite useful. So if you're doing a noise reduction, you want to first get the noise profile, and then you have to go back into the effect again, and then hit OK, and it would reduce the noise in the background to some degree. Okay, I'm going to undo the last two things that I did and hopefully bring it back to normal. After you finish recording your sound, you need to see how many seconds it is. There are two ways to do that. The easiest way is if you take a look at the top. These are the number of seconds that this track is going. However, you'll notice that this track is slightly longer. So if you click your playhead right exactly at the very end, and then you can look down here onto the bottom, make sure you are clicked on end or length. Either one doesn't actually matter. End will show you over here or over there. It will tell you how many seconds it is. Basically, you want to round up. So this is going to be 4.2 seconds or 4.5 seconds. You might want to give yourself a half a second or a whole second. I might bring this all the way up to say that this is 5 seconds. And this is the recording time that you need to include on this document. So 5 seconds. You're going to need to use this information later on for when you are actually starting to create your individual scenes. Your audio is what dictates how long your scene is going to be, unless of course you have dead air after your narration and your scene goes longer. But the problem runs in if you try and make a scene that's too short for the audio and it automatically moves into another scene. You're going to have audio overlap. So you need to pay attention to how long each audio is for each individual scene. So if you are still going to work on it, you want to make sure you're saving it as a project so that you can go back into it as an Audacity project. Every sound you're going to end up with two different files. You're going to end up with an Audacity file and a WAV file, and I'll show you that next. So it's just saving it. Make sure you are paying attention to where you are saving your projects so that you can get back to it. Make sure that you are using single word name for whatever the content is, and that it's easily identifiable to you. So I'm going to save this. Now this is an Audacity file. This will not be useful for us later on. This is only in case we need to make some kind of changes to this later on. Once you are ready to take this file and actually move it into Flash, you are going to, just like in GIMP, you need to export audio. Again, pay attention to where you're saving it. You can keep the same file name, that you don't need to change, and you're going to change it to a WAV. I believe it will automatically come in as a WAV, but you just need to look for it. The first 16-bit WAV is completely acceptable. And then you'll hit save. You can add anything if you want to. I end up just clicking through this. It's not really something that we need to do. And when you're ready to go on to the next one, you want to close out this track. Good luck.